Boeing 747, once crowned the Queen of the Skies, was grounded 3 years ago, but now it's making a shocking return. And no, it's not for passengers, luxury travel, or some billionaire's private collection. The real reason is massive, meaningful, and game-changing. So, if you love aviation, you'll want to hit that subscribe button right now. And let me tell you, I'm not talking about a comeback in glamorous first-class lounges or long-haul passenger routes. The rebirth is happening where most travelers never look, inside the high-stakes, fast-moving world of global cargo and logistics. Yes, you are not dreaming right now because freight companies are snatching up remaining 747s, converting older models, and locking in long-term maintenance deals like they're securing rare treasures. Airlines that once phased the jet out are now fighting to keep them in service. Maintenance firms are booking years ahead for overhauls, betting that the 747's cargo chapter could last well into the 2030s. In the age of same-day delivery and fragile supply chains, the Queen has found a new throne. The origins of this legend go back to the late 1960s, when air travel demand was exploding and airports were buckling under the pressure. Passenger jets like the Boeing 707 and DC-8 were impressive, but they couldn't keep up with the crowds. Boeing was tasked with a monumental challenge: build an aircraft so big and so capable it could replace several smaller flights at once, cut down congestion, and lower costs for airlines. That challenge led to the birth of the now iconic humpback profile, an engineering decision that not only gave the jet its instantly recognizable silhouette, but also made room for extra cargo capacity above the cockpit. On February 9, 1969, the first Boeing 747 took to the skies, an enormous machine unlike anything the world had seen. Less than a year later, in January 1970, Pan Am brought it into commercial service, and the Queen began her reign. She wasn't just big, she was powerful, comfortable, and capable of flying further than most competitors. For years, she defined the glamour and scale of long-haul travel, making intercontinental flights more accessible to ordinary travelers. Her history is marked with moments that go beyond standard airline service. In 1991, during the covert Operation Solomon, a 747 made history by carrying a record-breaking 1,087 Ethiopian Jews to safety in Israel, an extraordinary feat that pushed the limits of what even Boeing had envisioned. By the late 2010s, the 747's reign in passenger service was already on borrowed time. The core problem was as simple as it was expensive: fuel burn. A 747's 4 Pratt & Whitney, Rolls-Royce, or General Electric engines guzzled roughly 3,800 gallons of fuel per flight hour. Compare that to the Boeing 787 or Airbus A350, which average closer to 2,900 gallons per hour with just 2 engines, and the math is brutal. Over the course of a year on long-haul schedules, those extra 900 gallons per hour could add up to tens of millions in unnecessary costs. For large carriers operating multiple aircraft, Boeing's own cost estimates showed potential savings of around $100 million annually, simply by moving to smaller, more efficient twin-engine fleets. Fuel wasn't the only strike against the Queen. She was heavy, over 400 tons at maximum takeoff weight, and older airframes weren't built with the kind of composite materials or aerodynamic refinements that define newer jets. That weight meant more drag, more fuel, and higher maintenance bills. She was also loud. Even with later engine upgrades, the 747 struggled to meet tightening International Civil Aviation Organization (ICAO) noise limits in urban-adjacent airports. Airports in Europe and parts of Asia began slot restrictions or imposed higher landing fees for aircraft that couldn't meet their strictest noise categories. Environmental rules were just as unforgiving, with pressure mounting to reduce emissions per passenger kilometer. A plane burning a quarter more fuel than its competitors became hard to justify in airline boardrooms. By February 2023, when Boeing delivered its last 747 to Atlas Air. Only about 40 passenger configured examples were still flying commercial routes. Lufthansa, Korean Air, Air China, and a few others kept small sub-fleets in service, but even these were primarily on flagship routes or for prestige, not economics. Most passenger models had already been retired, broken down for parts, or parked in desert storage facilities in places like Victorville and Mojave, California. What had once been the ultimate status symbol for an airline was now, in practical terms, a financial liability. But here's where Boeing's foresight changed the game. Decades before the first signs of decline, the 747 had been designed with cargo in mind. Joe Sutter, the program's chief engineer, had insisted in the late 1960s that the distinctive hump, the cockpit's elevated position, would allow for a swing-up nose door. That design choice meant that, unlike almost any other commercial jet, a 747 could load freight directly through its nose, bypassing the constraints of side doors and making it possible to carry cargo longer or taller than the aircraft's own fuselage cross-section. The freighter variant could carry up to 140 metric tons of cargo. That's enough to fit a fleet of cars, industrial turbines, or even disassembled helicopters. The main deck's clear span, uninterrupted by a cockpit bulkhead, allowed for shipping containers, outsized pallets, and bulky machinery that smaller freighters couldn't touch. This gave the 747 a near monopoly in certain heavy lift and outsized cargo markets. When COVID-19 hit in early 2020, passenger travel collapsed overnight, but global cargo demand spiked. Supply chains were breaking down, container ships were bottlenecked at ports, and urgent shipments from PPE to vaccines needed to move fast. Air freight became a lifeline, and the 747 was suddenly indispensable again. Airlines like Lufthansa Cargo and Korean Air Cargo ramped up schedules. Atlas Air and Cargolux ran their fleets nearly nonstop. Even passenger 747s that had been grounded were temporarily converted to carry freight in their cabins, with seats removed to accommodate lighter but high-volume goods like masks and gowns. For urgent deliveries, say, shipping medical equipment from Shanghai to Los Angeles, the 747's combination of speed, range, and payload made it unbeatable. Where sea freight might take 3 weeks, a 747 could cover the same route in under 12 hours. The aircraft's nose door made it possible to load awkward shipments without specialized cranes or massive infrastructure at the airport, which was crucial during the pandemic when time and flexibility mattered more than anything else. By the end of 2021, global air cargo traffic was up nearly 19% over pre-pandemic levels, according to the International Air Transport Association, IATA. A significant chunk of that growth was being carried by 747 freighters. The same design that had once made the Queen of passenger luxury had, decades later, turned her into the undisputed monarch of heavy-haul logistics. Boeing's own 2024 World Air Cargo Forecast projects a steep climb in demand for freighters over the next 2 decades. By 2043, the global fleet is expected to grow by 66% from around 2,340 aircraft today to nearly 3,900. Within that surge, large wide-body freighters like the 747 are forecast to dominate, accounting for more than 75% of total capacity. For operators, that figure isn't just a number. It's a market signal that the age of heavy-lift jets is far from over. The 747-8F stands as Boeing's flagship in this segment, and its specifications give it a clear edge. Compared to its predecessor, the -8F offers 16% more revenue cargo volume and is 17% more fuel efficient, critical in a market where fuel cost and payload determine profit margins. The design's versatility is unmatched. The aircraft can carry individual pieces of freight longer than its own 224-foot wingspan, something no other freighter in service today can claim. For outsized cargo, think wind turbine blades, oil rig components, or industrial machinery, that capability is irreplaceable. Major operators are already positioning themselves to ride this demand curve. Atlas Air, one of the world's largest all-cargo airlines, plans to operate 41 Boeing 747, 411, 747-8Fs by the end of 2025. In public statements, Atlas has repeatedly warned of a looming shortage of wide-body freighters as demand rises faster than production capacity. Over in the UK, British cargo carrier One Air added its third 747-400 ERF in September 2024, a move aimed squarely at capturing the growing Asia-Europe freight corridor. Emirates, known primarily for its passenger network, increased its main deck cargo capacity by 15% last year by leasing additional 747-400 EFDEFs from Compass Cargo Airlines. A rare move for a passenger giant, but one that underscores the pressure to expand lift quickly. In China, SF Airlines has gone a step further, locking in a long-term maintenance deal with HECO through 2030, guaranteeing technical support and fleet readiness well into the next decade. For all the capability of sea freight to move bulk at low cost, it simply can't match the speed that makes air cargo so valuable. A container ship from Shanghai to Los Angeles can take 3 weeks. A 747 freighter can cover the route in under 12 hours. For certain sectors, pharmaceuticals, high-end electronics, perishable foods, or tightly timed product launches, that speed is non-negotiable. It's not just about urgency, it's about the value of the goods in motion. A delayed shipment of vaccines or a missed retail drop can translate into millions in losses. Post-COVID operations have proven that this demand isn't a temporary spike. Tracking data shows 747F flight activity today is actually higher than in 2019, even as passenger traffic has returned to pre-pandemic norms. Operators have leaned into high-yield routes, pairing the aircraft's massive payload with tight turnaround times. Even in a high-cost fuel environment, the equation still works, because the value of the cargo far outweighs the operating cost. The challenge ahead is whether Boeing can push the 747 into a greener future. Industry analysts point to the potential for a relaunch with new generation, higher bypass engines, lighter composite materials to cut weight, and more aerodynamic wing structures to improve lift-to-drag ratios. The markets driving this potential are shifting too. Growth in Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America, regions with rapidly expanding middle classes and infrastructure projects, could create fresh demand for large freighters capable of hauling everything from industrial generators to consumer electronics. But restarting production won't be simple. The Everett, Washington line that built the last 747 closed in early 2023, and tooling a facility for such a large aircraft after a dormant year would carry massive upfront costs. Boeing also faces the shadow of the 737 MAX crisis, which means any revival would need to be engineered and certified without missteps that could delay deliveries or erode customer confidence. The business case would hinge on locking in enough orders up front to justify retooling, a challenge in a market where lead times are measured in years. Even so, the direction of operator investment makes one thing clear. The 747's cargo life is accelerating, not winding down. From pandemic-era rescue missions to today's dominance in the oversized freight segment, the aircraft has proven itself indispensable. Now tell me, did you ever get the chance to fly on this beauty before she retired? If you did, how was the experience and what is your best memory of Boeing? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.